What's up, YouTube? In today's video, I'm going to go over my design process for this website I recently launched. So this is a website for Crush Editorial, which is a creative agency. I built it completely in Webflow. And right after launch, it was featured on Muesli's Interactions of the Week next to some really cool projects. And then it also won the Site of the Day award on CSS Winner. So I was super excited about this because it really showcases the power of no-code tools like Webflow and what can be done in them. So this client that I worked with was super awesome to work with, really understood, being a creative herself, the design process. So the first step that I took her through is I sent her this form and asked her to select a bunch of keywords that describe your brand, and then also send me a couple examples of sites you like and why. And then a lot of the brands I work with don't have very established brand guidelines, typography, colors. They may have a logo and not much else. So when I'm designing a website and an art treatment for them, I'm really working on the brand as well and building out elements of the brand. So I really had to dive deep into some of this work up front to make sure we're aligned together. And this helps, but it's by no means like the be-all, end-all. So I'll show you an example of what I mean by that. So the top 3 keywords that were selected were authentic, playful, and competent. And then a quote from the client was, "I like designs that feel like magazine layouts, lots of white space with clear visual elements, variable type sizes that draw the eye to important words." So that gave me an idea of what we're going to be working with. And a little background is this creative agency mainly focuses mostly on content, and it has sort of an editorial feel, so they get me a little bit of direction. But I knew playful was one of the keywords selected, and also one of the sites sent was this time capsule site, which I thought was really cool, has inspiration. So I kind of built out a couple of different examples in this mood board, like just pulling inspiration from Behance, from Dribble, and showcasing like, hey, this is one possible direction that really leans into the playful, creative side of things. And what I found out later is this was actually too playful, and this was not going to be the right concept. So playful can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and even with this playful design style of the inspo that was sent, she was more so talking about the interactions of the site, not the visual elements of it. So this is where it's really helpful to do mood boarding first, because I didn't have to spend a ton of time designing anything only to find out it wasn't going to work. I was able to quickly cross that idea off the list. So the second example I sent, and I sent these all together, she liked a lot more. This one leans more into that like authentic side of things. So again, we have some open space. We have a lot of grids. This was actually another example site she sent that she liked. So I built out some examples around that. Like, what are other sites that have this sort of grid layout and that have a lot of open space, very light themes. So this one was a little bit more interesting. She was a little bit more interested in this one. And the great thing about this is using XD, she was able to leave comments on each item and tell me what she liked or didn't like about each one of these. So it's not just, hey, I like this overall direction or I don't. So every piece that was included in here was helpful in some sense. But this last direction, the client absolutely fell in love with. And this is very much that very classic editorial feel, a lot of serif fonts, open space kind of things broken up in crazy grid layouts. And this was the, I would say, the clear winner. So we knew what we needed, we had a direction planned, and that was super helpful when diving in. Another thing that was a little bit different about this process is I worked with a content strategist. So our client provided most of the actual content. The strategist was able to sort of organize that content and let me know, hey, on the home page we're going to have these 2 headlines, we're going to have some sort of intro text, we're going to have this call to action. So I was able to go through here, and that really helps with not making the design look like a template, because so often we're given not final copy, and we'll have a headline that's about 1 to 2 sentences, but then we can't decide, all right, how do we want to pull apart these words or animate them or do different things like that if we don't know what the words are yet. So just having that content before I even started design was like a lifesaver on this project. It was super amazing. So I'll take you through some of the initial designs. When I started designing, I kicked around a lot of ideas. These never made it to the client. The client never saw any of these. But I was like, all right, big open headlines. I was playing with different shapes. None of this was set in stone yet. This is like me just trying to get as many ideas out there as possible onto the table to have something to work with. So I even decided, all right, what if we broke these headlines up into 2 separate headlines? We're going to have some intro copy. I didn't know quite what to do with this yet. I knew this was too busy. I knew it needed to have 2 headlines and a paragraph and a hero, and I felt that was kind of a lot, plus a CTA. So I knew I still needed to solve for this problem. So I started deciding, all right, what if I kind of design this a little differently? And this is where it's really helpful to have that content. And then what if instead of having that intro text in the hero, I can break it up into the next section and even have the CTA underneath. And a cool thing about working with prototyping tools like XD is I'm able to actually prototype interactions. So I'm thinking about like, what would my hover state be for these? How would it sort of work? Without having to build these out in Webflow. And I'm even thinking maybe I'll have a custom cursor of some sort, some sort of underline state. This is just kicking around a bunch of ideas very quickly. And then I thought, what if I have 2 photos that overlap and I have 2 headlines, like I break out the 2 headlines on some sort of animation that loops. And you'll see I'll come back to this idea later, but this ended up being like a pretty cool idea for the hero concept. So continuing with that, I was like, all right, what if I have the 2 photos, rotate out the 2 headlines, but keep the paragraph text in the link in view. It was still a little busy, but it was definitely an idea. And then I started breaking out these sections underneath, like these different the call outs I would need to have and what hover states would look like for them. And then I knew I needed a testimonial section, started playing with some designs for that, and then even the final CTA. I had no idea really how I was going to animate this yet. I was just playing with it and seeing what I could make. So this next one, this is where it started to come together. I kind of established a brand font that I really liked. I knew that like center aligning this text looked really clean with lots of space. Having a big photo here was helpful. And then for the first time, I pulled that paragraph text out under here. And I started playing with different hover states that could be kind of cool. And the client actually later said, well, what if we make that hover state into like an organic blob, kind of like some of the other shapes I was playing with earlier. So again, playing with different interactions, different layouts, and still I spent a lot of time on the hero, just kicking around different ideas. This is where it really started to take shape, and I knew I wanted to have these 2 headlines that sort of rotate out like this. I was going to have these different shapes, and I started bringing in some of that grid that we liked from some of the other concepts, but I was able to still keep some of the open space in other sections. And this was working a lot better, and this was the concept that I landed on for that homepage. Just lots of open space, kind of broken layouts. I decided that it was too much to have those 3 different blobs, like write-ups, all in one screen, so I put it in a slider, and that really brought this section to life a lot better too. Started aligning things better, working with different layouts. And that's where I landed on the homepage. So before I did anything else, I sent this to the client for review. And this doesn't happen too often, but she absolutely loved it. Didn't have any changes design-wise. Any changes we had were to like photos or copy. Was super awesome. So we were able to just quickly move from this. We had the homepage approved and start designing all the other pages. And again, I followed the same process of, all right, I knew I needed this headline on the About page, but how can I make it more interesting? How can I maybe throw in some shapes that I can animate, pull it all apart like crazy? And sometimes you have to get the bad ideas out so you can make room for the good ideas. So don't be afraid to just try different things, and if it doesn't work, it's okay. And this is where I ended up landing. And again, just having this content in advance helped to design something interesting and unique. But yeah, that was kind of the process. So once we had the internal pages approved, we went into developing, and the development was done in Webflow. And a lot of these interactions I kind of talked about in advance what we were going to do. So we knew we were going to have some sort of custom cursor. We knew the shapes would probably be moving. We had some hover states planned for XD, so the development was pretty straightforward. Overall, this project took 66 hours. That's all client calls, emails, revisions, actually finding inspiration, making mood boards, designing. And 33 hours of that was the development in Webflow and updating based on those changes. So yeah, it was a pretty fun project, I would say. Definitely would want to work on something like this again. And I mentioned before that there was only a couple parts that needed custom code. The majority of this was done with Webflow interactions. So the cursor where the SVG is kind of warping and moving, that was done with custom code. And then the last piece was this animated text. And what I was able to use for that was this animejs.com. So they have a warping SVG animation you can use. And they also have staggering, so you can stagger each letter one after the other. And there's actually this pretty cool moving text library where using Anime.js has all these different effects pre-made, ready to go. And you can actually just select any one of these and just plug in your code right into your project to make this effect happen. So that was the process that I took for building out this site. Thanks for tuning in. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe for future videos and updates. See you later.